Vous écoutez? Merci pour être ici à ce meetup. C'est un meetup fait avec Duchesse et Women Who Go. Et vu qu'il y a aussi tant de monde et qu'il y a beaucoup de duchesses, je voudrais profiter de ce moment pour parler du meetup Women Who Go, que je pense que pas beaucoup de monde le connaît. Et ça bouge pas. Pardon, excusez-moi. OK. Moi, je m'appelle Diana Ortega. Je suis développeuse chez Xavia. Je suis passionnée par le langage Go. Je suis une Women Who Go. C'est quoi Women Who Go? C'est une organisation c'est une idée qui est née à San Francisco, créée par une fille qui s'appelle Sarah Adams. Et cette idée, le but de cette idée, c'était de promouvoir le langage Go et de faire l'inclusion des femmes et des personnes qui ne se sentent pas incluses dans la techno. L'idée, c'est de faire des meetups, des rencontres et de partager avec le langage Go. Et il y a plusieurs meetups Golang à Paris. On a les meetups Golang Paris, Golang IO et Women Who Go. Moi, j'essaie de participer avec les autres meetups pour essayer de vous motiver à faire du Go. Et pour ceux qui ne connaissent pas, Go, c'est un langage dont l'idée est née en 2007. Il a évolué. Et on est dans la version 1.8 qui est sortie en février de cette année. Et il y a plusieurs dates importantes, et surtout 2009, que c'est la première version de Go au niveau interne en Google. Et la première version de Go, c'était en mars 2012. En août 2015, c'était Go 1.5. C'est important parce que c'est le langage. Avant, c'était fait en C, C++. Et le langage a été, à partir de cette version, a été développé, compilé en Go. Et Go est utilisé surtout parce que c'est simple, c'est sûr, c'est lisible, c'est minimal. Et il y a plusieurs idées. L'idée de Go, ce n'est pas de faire beaucoup d'innovation, mais de compiler de bonnes idées, de bonnes pratiques qu'on a eues pendant la story comme développeur. Et toutes ces bonnes pratiques ont été compilées. Et beaucoup de la complexité derrière ces bonnes pratiques a été cachée aux développeurs. Et c'est ça la fin du langage. On l'utilise parce que faire du Go, c'est faire un développement Go, la taille c'est petite et lisible, c'est très facile à comprendre les codes d'une autre personne. Et il a un garbage collector, on a une compilation statique. Et le système de concurrence, il utilise un système qui s'appelle Communicating Sequential Processes, que c'est le même système utilisé par Erlang et par AK, par exemple, avec le Go Channel. Et ça fait que la gestion de la concurrence est très puissante dans le langage. Et c'est le langage aujourd'hui très utilisé dans les microservices et les systèmes distribués. Qui utilise Go? Je pense que vous connaissez beaucoup de cette entreprise. Docker utilise Go, Kubernetes, Consul. Il y a quelques entreprises françaises. Mailjet, les Français utilisent Go. Streamroot, je pense que ça ne se fait pas beaucoup. NSQ, Grafana, InfluxDB, Packer. Et les logiciels que vous pouvez connaître. Pardon. Et ce qui fait plaisir, c'est que c'est facile, c'est une syntaxe familière, il y a un environnement léger, et il y a des conteneurs Docker, il est très performant. Et il y a des choses que les gens n'aiment pas beaucoup. C'est plutôt la gestion des packages. Il y a que ça ressemble beaucoup au C, par exemple, que c'est concis, qu'il n'y a pas de mocks. Les gens qui sont habitués à faire du mocks ou des assertions dans les tests. Et on fait d'une autre façon. On fait plutôt d'une autre façon. Et il y a beaucoup d'opinions par rapport à Go. Tout le monde a une opinion. Il y a des gens qui les détestent et disent non, mais ça peut décourager aussi aux gens. Et les gens veulent trouver des autres cas d'usage. Et il y a les idées, les debuggers, la situation s'améliore. Aujourd'hui, il y a pas mal, tu peux développer en Go avec un éditeur Atom. Il y a la même entreprise qui a fait IntelliJ, a fait un éditeur aussi, en BIM, il y a pas mal de choses. Et le monitoring. Mais comme je dis, la situation s'améliore chaque fois. Ça, c'est un exemple de Go. Comme je dis, c'est très simple. Ici, on montre un petit logiciel qui fait une exécution asynchrone. Et si vous gérez des autres langages, par exemple Java ou quelque chose comme ça, on fait ça avec la création, par exemple, d'un thread. Et ici, c'est juste avec le mot Go qu'on exécute une fonction de manière asynchrone. Ici, dans ce logiciel, on a les imports, comme on fait en Java ou en C. Et on a la définition d'une fonction qui c'est nom, paramètre, et un for. Par exemple, que la seule chose, c'est imprimer quelque chose. Et ici, on fait dans un main, comme on fait dans plusieurs langages, on fait l'appel de manière synchrone à cette fonction et asynchrone de la même fonction. Et c'est très simple et très transparent aux développeurs. Et pour la communication des processus, c'est plus ou moins pareil. Et la communication des processus se fait avec des channels. Et la création d'une channel, c'est comme ça. C'est juste une ligne, c'est pas trop compliqué. Et ici, on a la fonction. Et on fait l'appel de la fonction de manière asynchrone. Et dans la fonction, on se communique à travers les channels. On dit qu'on va écrire sur le channel le mot ping. Et en bas, on a la lecture du channel. Et simplement, il écoute. Quand il écoute le mot ping, il va imprimer le mot ping. Et c'est ça, Go. Et comme je dis, c'est très puissant. L'idée ici, ce n'est pas approfondir dans le langage. Et l'idée, c'était plutôt de vous motiver à faire du Go si vous ne le faites pas déjà. Et de participer au meetup. Et pas que Go, mais les autres meetups de Go. Et voilà, si vous voulez commencer, il y a la documentation de Go que c'est très clair. Et voilà, si vous avez des questions. Et comme je dis, ce sont des exemples simples, mais si vous voulez commencer, il y a des projets qui utilisent Go et des entreprises qui utilisent Go et des articles de référence et la documentation de Go pour commencer dans le blog de Go, c'est un tutoriel très, très facile d'utiliser et vous n'avez pas même besoin d'installer Go sur votre ordinateur. Il a déjà un framework qui vous aide à développer dans la page, un playground pour juste faire des petits tests. Des autres questions? Merci.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Jessie. I'm just going to give like a kind of short talk on some experimental things that I was working on that kind of failed in a funny way. And then I figured we could like open it up to Q&A and you could ask me anything within reason. But it doesn't have to be related to the talk. It could be about anything. I actually just got in this morning. So like if I say something super crazy, you're going to have to deal with that. And I'm like kind of thinking about the talk tomorrow too. So this will be interesting. So this is kind of just something I was playing around with. But I'm Jess, if you don't know me. I've contributed a bunch to open source software for fun and also because I like pain. But yeah, currently I work at Google on like kind of half on Kubernetes and half on Go. It's like an interesting mix. I just moved from San Francisco to New York, so I had to switch teams, and I still like contributing to Kubernetes, so kind of doing both. So if you don't know me, I've done a lot of stuff with containers, and a lot of containers has to do with sandboxing applications, so I also have a thing for sandboxes. So what is a sandbox, if you don't know? This is kind of something funny. I'm not actually sure what the French word for sandbox is, but like anything that has sand in it, it tends to be super messy. So it seems like counterintuitive that it would be named a sandbox because it's supposed to keep things inside instead of getting literally everywhere. And that's kind of what happens with like a real life sandbox. But like the sole purpose of this is to provide like a net reduction in your attack surface. And that's kind of, if you want to create a sandbox from a container, you would overall like want to reduce your attack surface. So you just have to think about like, is more things possible inside the sandbox or outside the sandbox? And you obviously want less things to be possible inside and more outside the sandbox. Almost so that you could imagine like if a hacker, was to exploit your application and it was running inside a container that you had sandboxed, then kind of what they would see inside this world in the container would be much different than outside the container where you had all your other applications running that they could have access to and all this other crazy crap. And it's really nice to have kind of an isolated environment. So the most famous kind of sandbox that I'm sure you all have used is Chrome. And Chrome on Linux actually has some really cool things that they like built in. So containers themselves are made up of C groups and namespaces in Linux, but the Chrome sandbox actually uses these primitives, and they don't create containers, but they kind of just built them into Chrome itself to create sandboxing for how Chrome works. So each tab gets its own PID namespace, which is for process IDs. It isolates the process ID space. So if you think about like what this could be used for, it's every single tab in your Chrome is just executing arbitrary JavaScript code, which is very scary. And it's untrusted, basically, even though you think that your code is trusted, technically it's not at the end of the day. So this kind of makes it so that that one tab can't see all the other tabs that you're running or all the other processes that you're running. So it's kind of only aware of itself, which is really cool. So it also uses like unprivileged user namespaces and network namespaces, which are also used for containers, coincidentally. So this just prevents, messing with the network, and also unprivileged user namespaces allows you to create these namespaces as an unprivileged user. So when you're, running Chrome on Linux, you don't have to like sudo Chrome. You use it as your own user, which, probably doesn't have root privileges by default. So you can like look at, whatever the sandbox stuff in Chrome and like see that it's running with the namespace sandbox and like all these features. So the one thing in this like list that I didn't talk about was seccomp. So seccomp is kind of how you really limit what can be done inside these environments. So this stands for like secure computing with filters, and it's built into the Linux kernel. So there's a bunch of like BPF programs that are built into the Linux kernel for like tracing and performance and stuff like that. But you know, seccomp is just one of them, and it's just like bytecode. It's super fast and nice, and that's pretty much why everything uses it. It's also not as buggy as all the other crap in the kernel, so that's good. The last thing you want is your secure things to be buggy and bad code. That's kind of what user namespaces are. So yeah, like why do we even care about this? Why am I even talking about Chrome when all I care about is containers? Because I care, but it's also really cool because all these things that you can do in Chrome, you can also do with containers. So like I added seccomp support to Docker a long time ago. And this just allowed you to create like your own kind of seccomp profile for what your containers can do and what like syscalls you can run. But nobody's going to write these because like, I don't know. I mean, I wrote one and it was horrible. So we also have like the default that runs on all your containers so that your containers are kind of sandboxed by default, like not necessarily as hard a sandbox as if you were to limit it to only what you knew your code would do, but at least we blocked kind of some essential things for you that you should not have had to begin with. So the default kind of is this whitelist. And you could also do a blacklist, but the whitelist is better because new syscalls are added all the time and blah, blah, blah. So it blocks a bunch of stuff. The kernel keyring is not actually namespaced in the kernel, so we block that because otherwise you're messing with things that other containers could also see, which is very sad. Not everything in the kernel is actually namespaced. Time is also not namespaced. So if you change time in a container, it also changes on your host and everywhere else. So that applies to the kernel keyring as well. And then clone, we blocked like the clone flags for namespaces. Most of them you would need cap sysadmin for. The only one that you don't is cloning a new user namespace, which is also what Chrome uses. But we specifically blocked that one because there's a bunch of vulnerabilities involved with user namespaces. People don't really know the limits to what you can do with them and how they interact with like different components in the kernel. So like there's CVs popping up all the time with regard to user namespaces, and that also applies to unshare. So there's like a bunch of other things like obsolete and like 32-bit syscalls that you wouldn't need, and then some like really, really old ones that we blocked anyways. So that was really cool. It was also very stressful to do that because like I was really worried that we would break everyone's Docker and then I would be the one blamed, and I like couldn't sleep at night thinking about it. But it turned out to be fine, which was shocking. I got very lucky. So yeah, after doing this, I kind of thought, you know, it would be cool to not have to have anyone ever think about like seccomp things, because it's horrible to have to think about like what syscalls is my app going to run. Like nobody knows that stuff. You could obviously like p-trace your application and try to catch them all, but you'd definitely be missing something and then someone's going to turn it off. So I had this really weird idea to like make something called bin container, which like took a static binary kind of, and it like put it all into, so you have your kind of Docker container image and then you put that into a binary as like a tarball and unpack it, and it's very strange. There's a diagram here, but it also used like the default seccomp. So you have your like rootfs for your Docker container. And that's like your image. So like if it's Debian or Alpine or, you know, and you do all your like crazy Docker file things on top of it. And then that kind of makes your rootfs. And then you have like, then from this, you actually kind of take the rootfs and you make it into this like tarball that you embed in a binary, so that you don't have to actually have the tarball on your host. It's like embedded in this binary, so all you need at the end of the day is the binary that will then like unpack this tarball that's embedded in it. It's super gross sounding, I know, but like I was like, I just want one thing. So this running binary takes the rootfs, it unpacks it, and it creates a container. for you, so that you don't need the Docker daemon, you don't need anything, you just need this binary that creates a container with your thing in it. And it has like the tarball in it as well. And it uses the root of S as a base. So it's like super insane and weird, but also kind of cool. In that, like, if you were deploying this out, all you would need to deploy is this one binary and it would create everything for you, which, you know, it sounds horrible, but also cool at the same time. But it had like seccomp, AppArmor, SE Linux, and running as an unprivileged user. So it kind of gave you the same guarantees that you get from the Chrome sandbox. And all in one binary, which was just another cool thing. So I like wrote a blog post on getting towards sandboxing. And then I ended up, because Merci actually by default can't do unprivileged containers with user namespaces. So I like emailed the mailing list like, hey, let's see how close we can get to actually doing this. There's a bunch of problems with C groups in that you can't create them without like capchown, and then C groups devices you actually need capsysadmin for. So creating them as an unprivileged user is hard, but Alexa Soirée from OpenSUSE, he like spent a year on this patch, and nice. And so yeah, he opened this PR and it took like a year to merge, but it basically didn't ignores all the problems with C groups, but it allows you to create these unprivileged containers, which is really cool. So something kind of real came from like a really dumb idea. So never give up. Yeah, it took a year. So then after that, I was like, okay, well, what else can we do? Bin container was kind of too heavy. Because like it had this entire tarballed rootfs in it, and actually like trying to compile these binaries took like almost all my like CPU for some reason, just because it was just like, what the hell are you doing embedding this like base 64 encoded tarball in me? Yeah, I thought about like most things that I actually put in containers are static Go binaries. And if you've ever done that before, you like start from scratch and then you kind of just like throw in the binary and you're done. So it's not like really a big rootfs. And then Dave Cheney, who's like kind of a big part of the Go community, was talking to me about it. And I had this random idea that you could use like the Go build toolchain to create these like binaries that could contain themselves. And it would just run the like Go process in a container at build time. But you'd still just have the one binary. So yeah, where bin container kind of like put it all in one thing with this huge rootfs. My new idea was taking this Go code, putting it in a static Go binary, then embedding that binary in another binary so that when you ran it, instead of like unpacking the rootfs, it would just like unpack this static Go binary and wrap it in a container and then use that, which is also semi-insane, but like less insane than the last thing. And also it could be like a part of the Go tool chain, although I'm sure that they would never merge something like this because it's just too crazy. And I would never propose it because I would just be like, bah. So yeah, this one also used like build time generated seccomp filter. So it had like a level of protection that the other one did not, because we actually had the Go code, so we could figure out like literally every single syscall that you used in your code. Even if you didn't at runtime like run that code, if it was dead code, we could still include it in our filter. Obviously we wouldn't need to, but just, you know, as a proof of concept, it's kind of interesting because then at runtime you're not forgetting anything. So yeah, the main difference really is this like build time generated seccomp filters, which is really cool. And I was like, yeah, we can like secure literally everyone's code. Like I just solved the problems of the world, except I didn't. So yeah, it still kind of felt heavy though. So I kind of just ended up taking out the container and I just did like the binary would run with its own seccomp filter, which kind of cleaned it up. And I was like, maybe this could be merged. But yeah, the whole point of this was so that you could avoid the whole thing of trying to catch all your syscalls at runtime and trying to figure out like exactly what you're going to call. But since we have the code, we can do it for you. Because doing it at runtime fails all the time. Everything breaks, and then people just turn off security in general. So it's been done in the past and tried before. Like no one turns on SE Linux, and no one turns on AppArmor or uses AppArmor GenProf. So this is kind of the problem with like not doing it at build time. So the user would like start profiling their Chrome or whatever, and then they'd open some tabs and say like, okay, that's good. Let me like take this generated profile from that. And then they'd apply the generated profile to Chrome and reopen Chrome. And then they'd try to play a video, something that they didn't do in all these tests, and it would fail. So like by doing this at build time instead and generating it for even dead code, we're kind of eliminating this whole factor. And then they turn it off. So that's cool. And I like thought that I had solved everything, but then I found all these problems with it. So then I was sad. So the first problem is that if you're executing a random program, you can't actually know all the syscalls that program is going to call. You're like back at ground one. So that sucks. And I was like, okay, well, maybe we can just ignore that for the time being, and as long as you don't execute something, then you get your secure, layer. But then I found another problem in that Go got support for plugins, which is really cool. But then we have the same exact problem again. I have no idea what the plugin is going to call. I don't have the code for that. So I can't actually know it all, and then I'll probably call a syscall that I didn't have, and then everything would break again. So that sucks. Opening plugins, horrible. And then the third one, you can actually call any sort of syscall, and then you can put these things in as variables. So like I don't even know what would be called here. And then if I tried to generate a profile for it, it wouldn't include like anything that I passed in on the command line, and we'd be screwed again. So yeah, this is just kind of showing that like, you can have crazy ideas and like run with it, but at the end of the day, like it might be horrible, but along the way we did get like unprivileged support for containers in Mercis, so that's kind of cool. All through like some crazy ideas that I had. So yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day, so you might as well just keep trying with your weird ideas, because I mean I had some fun, but yeah, it's not exactly there. So that was kind of that. I would also be willing to answer like any questions that you have on this or on anything in general, but yeah. Yes.
Yeah, of the three problems you spoke about, only the second one seemed very big deal, the plugins. But couldn't you make this like opt-in at build time? Like, wouldn't that be a solution?
Yeah, I was thinking of using like the header of the plugin or something like that, like throwing some information in there that I could then extract, especially since we control it in Go, obviously how plugins are built as well. But then I was just like, this was a lot of work, and I still am not sure that they would necessarily merge it if it wasn't like for everyone and like on by default. So yeah, it needs like some more thought, I think, but yeah, we'll see.
I have other questions. Something I'm not clear about bin CTR. I don't know how you pronounce this.
However you want.
Do you have a process fork inside it? Do you have like a main process that runs as root and privileged, and then another process that is like inside the container, or do you have like a single process that is namespaced and in C groups?
So when you run the binary, that's totally unprivileged itself, and then it creates and like forks and execs this container process, which is also unprivileged. But you will have like a parent and a child, and you can detach the child just like you would in Runc, and like almost put it to systemd to monitor or something else so that it's not attached to the parent anymore. But yeah, there's definitely two processes unless you like specifically say that you want to detach one, but they are both unprivileged.
Last one. I know you're a Linux girl, but I don't know if you know about Chrome. You spoke about the implementation of the sandbox of Chrome in Linux. Do you know how this was translated on macOS and Windows?
They use like whatever native things those have because they like the native sandboxing things. I'm not sure specifically how it's done on those and like what they're using, but it is whatever native things that they have. But they didn't like recreate namespaces by any means. They just used like whatever Mac OS provides and whatever Windows provides.
Okay. That was the last one.
Another question? No? I have a question. Basically, it's not about Docker and Sandbox. So it's bac à sable in French. Did you already try Calico on Kubernetes cluster and how to secure? Do you have some good practice or good advice to secure a network layer on Kubernetes?
Yeah, so I've definitely tried Calico, and it's like my go-to for the network plugins that I'll use when I spin up new clusters. It's really great. So securing your cluster is actually something I'm going to talk about tomorrow, but I'll touch on it today. There are network policies, so you can almost drop all like kind of inner pod communication and use Kubernetes like standard network policy for that. And then you almost go from nothing to defining everything. So you can say this pod can talk to this pod and this pod can talk to this pod. And yeah, I would say use that as the default, but unfortunately, there is not support yet for network policies in GKE, which is the Google Container Engine, but it is coming very, very soon, and so that should be built in. But if you just run Kubernetes on like GCP instances, not through like the GKE thing, you can totally get support for it out of the box.
Thanks. Yeah. Another question? No? Okay. So, thanks.
Yeah, you wanted to share some tips for contributing on open source?
Oh yeah. So yeah, usually my go-to things to like get into open source communities kind of. And if any of you are interested in contributing to Kubernetes, you can totally find me after and I'll like help you. Yeah, I usually like to go through and look at like help wanted labels, which we have on Kubernetes. I don't know how actively those are maintained though. So if you do want to contribute, I would say come find me because I could probably point you in the right direction. And then, yeah, the Go project actually has really well maintained help wanted labels. So I would also start there. And the Go project is fun to contribute to in that the people who review your code are like really kind of cool, but it's also kind of intimidating because it's like people like Rob Pike or like Russ Cox, but they are very nice. And I remember like one of my contributions had like 3 of them on it, and I was like, oh shit, this is really scary. Or merd, is that how you say that? But like, yeah, they're very kind and like will help you through it and make sure that you like get your patch in and stuff. So yeah.
Are there any open source contributors here in the room? Yeah, some of them.
Cool.
Voilà, Katia. Bonjour. Moi, je suis organisatrice de Duchesse. Pardon. Merci. Voilà. J'étais dans la porte pour pouvoir ouvrir tout le monde. En fait. Et voilà, Diana, elle s'est déjà présentée. D'ici, déjà, qui connaît, et c'est la première fois, qui vient pour la première fois à travers des Duchesses France. Ah oui, quand même, pas mal de monde. Et vous le connaissez, qui connaissait d'avant, du coup, de ceux-là, qui le connaissaient, qui l'a connu grâce au Twitter ou notre site ou les réseaux sociaux. Vous êtes arrivé comment, en fait, si vous pouvez dire, hein? Ici, personne, hein? Twitter. D'accord. Bah, nous, on est, du coup, il y a pas mal de monde qui ne connaît pas Duchesse. Nous, on est un réseau aussi plutôt techniquement agnostique aujourd'hui, même si on venait du Java. Et on essaie de rassembler des filles de la tech, mais aussi se faire accompagner par des garçons. Et en fait, voilà, on a organisé le meet-up un peu à la dernière minute avec Jessie qui participe demain au Paris Container Day. Et du coup, moi, je me demandais si déjà, parce que Jessie est là, si vous voulez, si vous avez des idées, vous avez des doutes, vous voulez qu'elle parle d'un sujet en particulier, moi, je voulais bien qu'elle nous partage un peu par rapport, parce que c'est quand même une femme assez extraordinaire qui est arrivée très vite et très rapidement à contribuer à des projets très très forts et très importants dans l'open source, pas facile du tout. Et je me demandais si vous êtes curieux et si vous avez envie de lui poser des questions par rapport à son parcours. Est-ce que c'est oui ou non? Mais répondez. Oui, d'accord. Bon, people want to know about yourself. Moi, je propose que si déjà il y a des gens si vous avez des questions tout de suite, que vous vouliez lui poser par rapport à quelles études elle a fait, comment elle a commencé à contribuer dans l'open source, n'importe quoi, dites, parce qu'elle est là et c'est rare d'avoir quelqu'un comme ça accessible pour lui parler tout de suite. Donc, et si c'est une question technique aussi, hein. Une question là, ça commence là.
Hello. I would like to know what is the project you prefer to work on?
That's hard. Mostly because I get bored on one thing. Yeah, I would say whatever needs help the most, mostly because then I can find things easier. But I really like contributing to Kubernetes and Go, mostly because the communities around them are so nice and all the people are really cool and they get very excited when you make changes and submit them. So yeah, definitely those.
So when was your first open source commit?
Yeah, that's really hard. I would have to say that it was probably to Packer, maybe, the HashiCorp thing. There was some sort of bug with some sort of builder that I was using, and I fixed it, and they merged it right away, and I was like, did anyone even test that? But yeah, that was really cool because it was actually blocking me doing something, and they were super nice about it.
How long ago was it?
Maybe 5-6 years. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah. What's your next crazy idea?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Yeah, those take a lot of time. I don't necessarily have one right now, but there are 2 patches that I'm working on getting into Kubernetes currently, which I will be showing at Container Days tomorrow. So those are kind of cool. But yeah, no super insane ideas currently. I'm kind of tapped out on those, so I need to find some inspiration or something.
I've followed your blog for so long. Have you finished with your Linux where everything runs on a container?
Yeah, so I've been doing that for maybe 5 years too. That is never finished because it's just something that little things will go wrong and then I have to fix them, of course. But yeah, there's so many things that I want to do, and I actually gave a talk recently at CoreOS Fest on how I took away, because my base before was Debian Jessie, which is a very well named distro, but I exchanged it for CoreOS's Container Linux, and so that caused like all sorts of problems, and I had to fix those. But I added graphics drivers, and so now it's very, very minimal. But I could take it further in the fact that like CoreOS offers auto updates. If I like spin up my own like of this Omaha server, like there's just all these things that I could do if I was like actually insane for my laptop. But I never really got around to them because it just seemed like the time put in wasn't exactly worth the payoff for my one computer. But yeah, I could probably continue that until I'm like 80 years old, and like just I don't know if that will happen.
Yeah, and just another question. What got you to go that deep into Linux and the kernel and all those things?
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to continue as far as the rabbit hole would go, I guess, and fix as many problems as I could find and like the things that I actively used. And yeah, it's a little bit insane, but I like to learn new things. So once I was like kind of over a certain area, I would just like go one layer under. And then, yeah, there's a certain point where you just have to stop though. So it's been cool, but it gets like kind of tiring. I mean, I think it would be like firmware, hardware, and then I don't know. Atoms.
Okay, so it's a question I ask to people I receive in job interviews, so please forgive me. If I give you a magic wand and you can change whatever you want in the Go language or add something you think it's missing today, what would you do?
I guess like make a operating system like Linux, but that didn't have all the bugs. Just because that would be great if there was like an open source operating system that was one, secure by default, and two, didn't have all the like crazy issues that you encounter with Linux, and had like a great community around actively maintaining drivers for literally everything, like even NVIDIA. But that's like a very dreamlike world.
So Kubernetes is open source, and there is a lot of open source in the containers world, but there are so many different projects. I feel it also brings confusion and complexity. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think we're at like peak confusion right now because there
is it the peak?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I thought a few years ago we were at the peak, and then there were like 4 other orchestrators open source. So I don't even know where we are now. I hope that the Cloud Native Computing Foundation can kind of adopt projects that people can trust and use as almost their go-to instead of just using, all of GitHub and trying all those, like maybe starting with the ones that are adopted into the foundation. But I do fear that they are adopting things too fast because they have like 15 projects now, and it's a little bit absurd, and there's multiple of each project, like there's multiple container runtimes and all this, and then you're getting into the same issue that you have on like GitHub itself. So if they could just like slow their roll a little bit, then that would be great. But yeah, it's unfortunate circumstances. I feel like there is a need for companies to almost open source things, and then sometimes they abandon them too, which is really sad. But there's like publicity around it, which makes companies look good. But then we have 80 bajillion projects, and everyone's just working on their own, instead of if everyone kind of devoted themselves to one, that one could be very, very great instead of having like this skew of like 30, but politics and companies. So that will never happen. Yeah, it's kind of sad. That was a terrible answer, but.
Like, do you see any solution to slow down the pace, or?
Yeah, I think like hopefully the Cloud Native Computing Foundation gets a little bit more picky as they grow. Because a lot of these projects come out right away, and then they'll almost adopt them, and then something else is open sourced and it's almost better. So I hope that they'll learn from some of the mistakes they've made and do it better in the future, and they probably will.
Okay, so foundations would be a good way to do it, like the Apache for the big data world, for example.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. I have a different question. How you organize your day work? How many hours you put for have to work and for your open source contribution?
Yeah, so that's kind of hard. I usually just so every day I like look at my emails and I'll like reply to first the things that I'm pinged to on GitHub or on a mailing list. So if I'm like actively CC'd on it or someone replied to my initial message, I'll do all those things first. And it's regardless of project at that point. And then after that, I'll see if like any of my like open patches like need to be updated, which usually that will be covered in the first one. And then after that, I go through like all the remaining kind of mailing list and things. And then that's like pretty much my entire day. And I usually don't even get through all the remaining mailing lists and things. I only contribute to open source. Like I don't really know the internal Google tools, but I am totally okay with that. So yeah, that's kind of what I do.
Yes. How do you think we can make open source more inclusive?
More what? Sorry.
More inclusive.
Oh, yeah, that's also hard. Yeah, I think that, focusing people on the good communities and not the bad ones will at least give them an introduction to open source that is not so horrible. So there's that, so kind of whittling down the entire sea of open source into just the good ones. But a huge problem is that, a lot of the people who work on open source, it's in their free time, and not everyone kind of wants to contribute to code in their free time, which totally makes sense. There are days where I'm just like, I am not going to use free time for code. And I get paid to work on open source, which is like a very rare thing. So I have this like privilege that a lot of people don't have. So I think it's a mix between the two, but definitely like communities that are welcoming and actually reward people for giving them free code, definitely needs to happen. And there's a few things, which I forget the name of now, but they will actually pay for contributions to like anyone who contributes to projects. And that's really good. That would be a great way to actually reward people for giving them their time.
Yeah, about your organization, because I follow your Twitter also, and you are like doing 100 things a day. Do you use a tool to organize yourself, or do you use a method or something like getting things done? Or
yeah, I've tried like all of those to-do apps. I'm really bad at it. Sometimes my like go-to thing, if I actually really, really need to remember something, is I text myself. Which I would not recommend to anyone because it's just terrible. But yeah, none of those to-do apps really work for me. So it's like there is just like a bunch of things in my brain that like they get dropped all the time. So sometimes I'll just forget things entirely. And like my calendar is like my life. So like if I actually do have to be somewhere and it's not my calendar, it's never going to happen. So I make sure to keep that up to date. But everything else is like a text to myself if it's really important.
Hey, Benjamin, cloud foundry specialist. I saw you last time 2 years ago when you came to the Docker meetup, talking about how you erased macOS all over and replaced it by Linux. I wondered, how long have you been a Googler? Actually, weren't you working for Docker before?
Yeah, so I was, and then I hit my year at Google on June 20th. So it's like next week, I think. So yeah, a year, basically.
Oh, okay. And in the landscape of those containers orchestration things, I call them actually superstructure, because infrastructure would be VMs and networking, and over it applications only see Kubernetes or Cloud Foundry or anything which would be a structure, but it's over, so superstructure. Anyway, how do you see the future of those competing Docker Swarm, Kubernetes, Cloud Foundry, and how they fit together? How do you see them just fail in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on and this is going to sound terrible as me, an open source person, but enterprise adoption, because they're going to be the ones, paying for it in some sort of way, either if it's through, putting active developers to contribute or other means. So, as long as these projects get enough people using it that will maintain it and will, add features but not ruin it in a way, then it can survive. But I am not actually sure what's going to happen in the end. I actively await seeing what's going to happen, and I honestly at this point I don't really have I'm not really rooting for anything. I just will be entertained. So yeah, I guess we'll see, honestly.
And on which part of Kubernetes have you worked?
So I added a feature to the service catalog last quarter, and then now I'm adding features for runtime security hardening of containers. A lot of the same stuff that I did in Docker, I'm just pulling up to Kubernetes.
New question. What do you think about the comparison between Linux and Kubernetes? Kubernetes would be like a Linux of the data center. Do you think that's right, or do you think it's not yet the case?
So yeah, I mean, I understand the analogy of there's drivers and different components kind of, and there's almost the same model of people integrate their own sort of driver for various parts of Kubernetes, and it's a lot like Linux. And there's also a bunch of contributors and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's kind of just very buzzwordy. So yeah, that's a very honest opinion on that. Yeah, I think that they're very similar in ways, but it's not an operating system, which I am taking it very literally, but I mean, it's not.
Okay.
As both a contributor to Kubernetes and a Googler, what would you recommend you personally to make a full, stable, production-ready cluster of Kubernetes using GKE or own put into production GCP stack of Kubernetes?
Yeah, I think GKE for sure, just because it's managed by Googlers. And if you have any sort of bugs, you can just be hey, this thing isn't working, and then they'll on-call page someone who actually works on Kubernetes to debug it for you, which is super nice. If you were just running that on GCP itself, you could never do that unless you actively knew these people and you could bug them into fixing your thing. But they're paid to literally do that, so it's really cool. Yeah, I would say that's the easiest way, but if you do have an entire, admin team and you do want the control of running your own cluster, then definitely you can run it on GCP and not use GKE, but you're still paying someone to manage it.
And in order to run our own Kubernetes cluster, what do you think about Tectonic by CoreOS?
Yeah, I think it's one of the great distributions because it comes with RBAC by default. They had RBAC before it was even in beta. They pull up the security features which are really important for a cluster, and a lot of the things that you would shoot yourself in the foot for by not having something like that, they do for you. So I would definitely recommend Tectonic for sure.
Nobody else?
Hello. I have a question about communities. Which was your favorite community in open source?
Yeah, it's definitely between Go and Kubernetes. Kubernetes I really like because it's like growing very fast, and we're managing hopefully to keep the culture of it, and that like welcoming new contributors and really making them feel included, like they are a part of something. And there's like a entire Slack for Kubernetes as well as Go, but I mean, it might just be a personal thing, but I feel like I know like the Kubernetes developers very well, and I think that they would actively try to include everyone almost a step further than any other project that I've seen.
Did you actually happen to leave a community because you did not like it in the end?
I have left open source communities because I don't like them, like a lot of people have as well, totally. I will not say which ones.
Can you give the reasons? Not the names.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like an overall like feeling. You know, you feel when you know you aren't having fun, or if you're not included, or if you aren't generally being respected for the work that you're giving in return. And I love the communities where all those things are the exact opposite, where like you do feel respected, you are, you know, included, and it feels like everyone kind of like surrounds you and knows you. So yeah, I would say definitely those reasons.
Thank you.
Is it hard to scale those communities?
Yeah, for sure. Especially with like keeping, you know, the culture. It's almost like scaling a startup where, you know, you hire new people and then all of a sudden like their attitudes and mentalities start like shifting the culture of the startup. That can totally happen with open source communities because they start commenting on issues and then it starts setting the tone almost for other things. So I think like I was talking to a few other like open source communities that do like JavaScript things, and some of them will almost even like in new projects where they don't have like anything happening and they want to make sure the community has a certain tone, they will put in issues for the project and they'll tone it in a certain way that people will almost follow that throughout. But, you know, there is always the people that come in and kind of mess it up for everyone else. And the community has to have the power to get rid of them, honestly, at the end of the day. Like if they are really being actively malicious, or if they are ruining the spirit of the community in a way that it affects more than just one person, so that, you know, you don't want to ruin an entire community because of like literally one person. So it's a hard balance, and it gets like very political. And I like without the people who actually run these communities, I think that they would be entirely screwed because you'd be leaving it up to engineers who I don't think are maybe the best people to do that. They have to have like very good people skills and stuff like that. So thank God for like community managers and all those people.
And I was wondering if Google is paying people to take care of the communities the way you are paid to contribute?
Yeah, so there's like Sarah Novotny is the, you know, like maintains the community for Kubernetes, and she's, I think, hiring more people. I hope so, because she works so hard. She's like one of my heroes, because I don't know how she does it. But yeah, there are people who actively maintain the community just like it's a project.
Did you actually start a community?
Start a community?
You, yourself?
No, I mostly just join them. Most of my projects I really don't like maintaining, just because I spend so much time maintaining other things that I'm like don't want to grow it past like this small thing that I'm working on. And yeah, that's just like so much work to build a community from nothing. And also you have to have a project that like is really, really, really cool. But yeah, it would be cool to do that one day, but it's just almost sounds exhausting doing it.
When did you start coding? Was it like a very early days passion, or did it came later?
Definitely later, which I think is like unlike a lot of people.
Yeah, that's why I was asking.
Yeah. So I always like was fascinated with computers, but not necessarily coding on them. My parents used to always blame me whenever the computer would break, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Mostly because of Napster, like BearShare, those things. But I would actively fix the things that those would cause. So I don't know what their problem was. They still actively blame me whenever their stuff gets broken, and like I'm fixing their Wi-Fi and making it faster. But no, it's all my fault. So there was that, but it was never like coding. I of course had one of those like geo sites where like it has glitter and it's like shimmery, but that wasn't anything extreme. And then in college I was a math major, and I think like the most serious coding that I started doing then was like for requirements for the math major were CS courses, and that's when I learned like Java and like real things. So yeah, it definitely wasn't until college.
Yeah, but because I wanted you to share what you shared with us before. How did you start professionally speaking? Because it's quite amazing. Yeah, because we take for granted you're an expert on Linux, but you actually didn't start coding on Linux layers. So if you can.
Yeah, I started speaking at a meetup in Brooklyn for JavaScript, but I gave a talk on running, like Node.js apps in containers. It was probably like the most awful talk ever, but people like really liked it because the community like around that meetup was so great. So always meetups are awesome. Yeah, like then I was just like, that was kind of cool. Maybe I could do that again. And then I started just filling out like call for papers, and eventually like you get better at speaking, but it is like, I don't know, I still feel like I have like way room for improvement.
Yeah, but I was meaning to your first job. It was in a startup.
Oh, yeah. So, my first job out of college was working at this like kind of web app thing where we made those Facebook apps that steal your data. So I did like a lot of the front end stuff, and then the like PHP that connected to the Facebook API at the time, and then it would like take all your like friends or whatever, and then it would spam them with things. I was a terrible person. I probably have bad karma for life. So there was that, and then like web agency work after that. So I definitely did like a lot of web stuff, and then like finally started like deploying my own web apps and stuff, and then I was like, ooh, Linux is a thing. And so I started learning about that, and then like slowly the layers kept getting deeper into weirder things. And I was like definitely excited to never have to do CSS again, because that stuff is way harder than literally anything else I've ever done.
Nobody else? Oh, I think it's 20 past 20, so it's okay. It's a good time. You have any? Well, if they have any other question, they will reach you in the networking buffet. Merci, mille merci, du coup, pour nous accueillir, vraiment super rapide, super bien organisé, filmé, avec un buffet et tout. Donc vraiment merci beaucoup. Et voilà, thank you very much for coming. So voilà, c'est fini. Donc on peut aller profiter de vous.